Namaste and good morning, everyone. We'll start with the prayers. Om Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu सह वीर्यं कर्वावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै. ओम शांति शांति शांति. Now Mahamrityunjay mantra 3 times. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukam Iva Bandhanan Mrityormukshiyamamrutat. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukam Iva Bandhanan Mrityormukshiyamamrutat. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukam Iva Bandhanan Mrityormukshiyamamrutat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Welcome everyone. Today, instead of doing the Rama forms, we'll do the Rama prayers which we learned last time. So I'll say one line at a time and you repeat after me, and then we will do the whole prayer together. Ramo Rajamanihi Sada Vijayate Ramam Ramesham Bhaje Ramena Bhihata Nishachara Chamoho Ramaya Tasmai Namaha. Ramanasti Parayanam Parataram Ramasya Dasosmyaham Rame Chittalayah Sada Bhavatu Me. Bho Rama Mamuddhara. Now all together. Ramo Rajamanihi Sada Vijayate Ramam Ramesham Bhaje Ramena Bhihata Nishachara Chamo Ramaya Tasmai Namaha. Ramanasti Parayanam Parataram Ramasya Dasosmyaham Rame Chittalayah Sada Bhavatu Me. Bho Rama Mamuddhara. So the type of words in Sanskrit we discussed, there are three: nominals, verbs, and indeclinables. Today we'll discuss verbs. Some of the concepts in verbs you already know, and some would be new concepts which I will be giving you sort of an overview. So we discussed about the special verbs, and one of the special verbs, if you remember, we had as dhatu, which is in the sense of to be. We also had another root called bhu, which all used many times in the same sense as us, but actually would more appropriately be translated as to become. And then another very special root is called kru, means to do. If you look at all the instances of all the verbal forms and the nominal forms which are used in Sanskrit, kru dhatu would be pretty much at the top, or in like top 3 at least. One of the most commonly used roots in Sanskrit literature. And one of the reasons why it is so commonly used, that in Sanskrit it is allowed for you to do anything. So in English, for example, you eat the food. In Sanskrit, you can say I'm doing the eating, something like that. So anything actually Sanskrit allows, and that kind of construction might look a bit strange in English if you say I am doing the eating, but in Sanskrit that is fine, that is considered perfectly okay. So many times if you do not know certain verbs of different kind of phenomena, but you know the noun because nouns are easier to know, you can use the noun and saying I am doing and use the verb form of kru. So you can say like I am doing the laughing, that is also okay. So Sanskrit allows you to form the structures where the kru dhatu becomes extremely versatile, and it practically allows you to put it in any phenomena. So in English, like it may be okay to say that I'm doing the walking, but in Sanskrit, you can actually practically apply it to any kind of nominal forms which can be represented as action using the verb kru. Kru dhatu does not have the base ending in akara, just like as. As dhatu does not have the base ending in akara. Kru dhatu also does not have a base ending in akara. It uses the same endings, ti, taha, anti, si, thaha, tha, mi, vaha, maha. But the forms are slightly different. You can recognize them if you look at them to kind of get the meaning of person and number, yet the forms are not exactly the same what we studied, bhavati, bhavatah, bhavanti, or gacchati, gachatah, gacchanti. They are slightly different because its stem does not end in akara. Kru dhatu is ubhaypadi. If you remember, ubhaypadi means it has both endings, parasmaipadi and atmanepadi. So it has both endings, and the forms are used in both the endings. So I have put the forms here. I have also put a table of all the verbal forms, and I have posted that table in our repository drive. So kru dhatu is considered a bit special because of its versatility in Sanskrit. Then concept of suffixes. We know that there are two kind of verb endings or suffixes to make the verbal forms which are ready to be used in a sentence. So with the root, there are about 2000 roots. As you know, we have discussed it. There are about 2000 roots, and in Sanskrit, practically every single word is formed from those roots, applying certain special rules. So the structure of Sanskrit that way is pretty amazing, that if you know the root and you know the rules, you can derive any word in Sanskrit, except some indeclinables maybe. But most any word you can derive using the roots and the rules which are provided by Panini. And even out of these 2000 roots, it's about 500 or so, they are more commonly in use in the texts. So you put these endings, some roots take Parasmaipadi endings, some roots take Atmanepadi endings, and some roots take both endings. So they are called Ubhayapadi. So we saw different endings, like these are the endings. So for Parasmaipadi, ti, taha, anti, si, thaha, tha, mi, vaha, maha. And for Atmanepadi, we saw these endings, te, ite, ante, se, ithe, dhve, I, vahe, mahe. We also did some practice with the different verb forms, how to apply these endings. And they are for the present tense. Actually, Panini uses these endings for all the tenses. And then he modifies those tense endings a little bit for different tenses. But for our purpose, when we study, we can apply these endings directly. Particularly, it is very easy to apply these endings if we have a verb which has a base ending in akara. Then these endings are just applied pretty straightforward. So this we did a lot of practice. One example is gacchati, gacchataha, gacchanti, gacchasi, gacchataha, gachatha, gacchami, gacchava, gacchama. You practically might have memorized by now this particular verb form, because we have chanted this verb form together a lot of times in the class. So these are the endings. Then there is a concept of prefix called upasarga in Sanskrit. So there are about, as I said, 2000 root words which represent different verb forms. What these prefixes do, they come before those those roots, and then they provide additional meaning to the verbal root. So this actually allows a lot of flexibility to create new verbs with different meanings by adding the prefix. It is something similar to what we have in English. Say, for example, verb called put. So if you look at in dictionary, to put simply would mean to move or place anything. That's generally the meaning of put in English. But then you can put certain prepositions after put, and the meaning changes quite drastically. So if you say put about, it means to disturb or worry. Put down, to write down, to record. Put off, to postpone. Put on, to clothe oneself. To put out, to extinguish as a fire. So even though these are the prepositional words, but here they are put after the verb in English. So in other words, they become postpositional. And this is the flexibility in English language, that you can take a verb and then you put these prepositional words after it in the post position, and then it creates different verbs with very different meanings. That gives a lot of flexibility in English. But at the same time, if you know that if you take the meaning of the verb and the, I'll call it right now here suffix, if you put this thing together, the meaning of this and this, they sometimes you can get an idea what the meaning would be, and sometimes you will not. The meaning would be quite different. Like put on, to clothe oneself, is a very different meaning than saying to move or place, and on means, as you know, in generally in English. So sometimes the Sanskrit prefix concept is pretty much the same, except it is a prefix, like so that it's a position which is put before rather than after the verbal root. So I'll take an example of verbal root hru. Hru means to take away, to rob, to plunder, to steal. This is the general meaning of the verbal root hru. And then I have put certain prefixes here. So because the nouns are formed from the verbal roots in Sanskrit, these prefixes or upasarga, even though they are put before the verbal root, they are carried over when we make nouns out of these. So I have given a certain examples of noun, and then you can see the prefixes here. So the prefix here, ahara. Ahara means food. So you put a a prefix and it becomes food. It becomes changes the meaning quite drastically. In some cases, the meaning is easily guessed because all these prefixes, they have their own meaning, so to speak. Just like the prepositional suffixes here in English, they have their own meanings. Similarly, these prefixes in Sanskrit, they do have their meaning, yet in many cases they will change the meaning of the verb different from what you would intuitively guess based upon the verb meaning and the prefix meaning. So ahara becomes food, vihara becomes enjoyment or dwelling place, prahara means strike or attack, samhara means, it's the prefix here is some, killing or violence, and parihara means disrespect, giving up, abandoning. There are more meanings to it. So just like in English, there are more meanings to every such combination. In Sanskrit, there are more meanings. A root itself has many meanings. And then when you put the prefix, it can be used in different meanings. So these are called upasarga. This gives a tremendous flexibility in Sanskrit, and you will find its usage because it carries over to noun also, unlike in English where we do, I mean, you can put it in the nouns also, but you don't have such a flexibility to make the nouns from the verbs, unlike in Sanskrit where all the nouns are formed from the roots. So all these prefixes which are applicable for the verbal roots can be used for the nouns also, like in this example. In Thomas Egenes' book, he discusses on page number 197 and 198. Let me open the book. So I'll go to 197 page. And here he discusses actually the roots. And also one more thing, it can be actually more than two roots. So two prefixes. So you could potentially put more than one or two, or depending upon, I mean, there is no theoretical limit. Practically, of course, there is a limit. So you could say we and a, first we and then a, and then make it another word. So that's quite possible, and that happens. Two or three prefixes are not uncommon in Sanskrit to put together. And then he has, so there are about 20 prefixes, and Egenes' book gives you all the prefixes here with their meanings, potential meanings. So you could look at this list. It's available on in Egenes' book, page number 197 and 198. And he also gives the examples, some examples of those kind of roots. Then coming back to our list, let me just refresh the screen. There is some problem here sometimes that the screen. So these are the upasargas. I just wanted to give you an overview of what prefixes and upasargas are. We are not going in detail, of course, in this course. As I said, some of the topics I just wanted to give you so that you can pursue on their own, and we'll get more in details of these things in the next level classes. Then tenses and moods in Sanskrit. So in the word for tense is kala. Kala means time. So tense is related to time. So kala, and moods is artha. These are the Sanskrit words for tenses and moods. So Sanskrit has 10 tenses and moods. Actually, there are total 11 here, as you can see, but this one, last one, late, subjunctive, this is not used except in Vedic literature. So we ignore it. So we do not cover it even in the advanced courses unless you are getting trained for reading Vedas. So generally this part is left out. So then 10 remaining. The tenses, these are the English names, or I would say English grammatical names. Then these are the Sanskrit names, Vartamana, so present tense. Vartamana is the Sanskrit word. And this is the nickname. So nickname is something which was given by Panini to these tenses and moods. And he put all these nicknames, these are actually monosyllabic: lut, lung, lit, lung, lut, rut, lot, ling. And because of everything starts with lakara, they are also combinedly called lakaras. So in Sanskrit, many times you will see in the books and people referring lakaras. Lakara simply means, when somebody says lakaras, it means tenses and moods, because this is the structure, the legacy of Panini we are actually having, which he has given the nicknames for every single tense and moods, because it makes working with his grammar a lot shorter and easier. And these have become so popular in India that many times people just refer saying lat lakara. That means referring to present tense. Instead of saying vartamana, which is the right word, they will say lat lakara. So familiarize yourself with these nicknames, very commonly used, and as you can see, these are easier to use because these are all monosyllabic. So Vartmana is present tense, that we have seen already. So this is the only one we have seen so far. We worked on Gacchati, Gachatah, Gacchanti in Parasmaipadi and Atmanepadi both. Atmanepadi we did Labdhatu, for example. So we did both of them, both of the Parasmaipadi and Atmanepadi, only in the Lat Lakara, present tense. Then there is another called, actually Sanskrit has, so you will say, how come there are 6 tenses? Normally there are only 3 periods of time: present, past, and future. So how come there are 6 tenses in Sanskrit? And 6 tenses are because there are 3 types of past tenses and 2 types of future tenses, and fortunately only 1 type of present tense. So why there are 3 types of past tense? What does it mean? The way Sanskrit grammarians describe 3 types of past tenses were this: anadyatan bhuta. This past tense is used for describing the events which took place other than today. So anything which took place in the past but not today's past, or you can say sometimes it can refer to recent past, then you would use lang lakara, anadyatan bhuta. This past tense was used for paroksha bhuta. That means an event which I was not witness of. So I'm describing some historical event which I am not witness of. So then this tense is used, and this bhuta in general, that can be used in all other circumstances. So even though these are 3 classifications of past tenses, the subtle meanings which I just explained, that is pretty much lost. Just like in Parasmaipadi and Atmanepadi, using the different roots, that whether you are using it for your own purpose or for somebody else's purpose, that meaning is lost. But the endings are there. So similarly, the subtle meaning behind using these 3 past tense, that is lost. You can simply translate everything. Say, for example, if I'm using a past tense of a root called vad means to speak, whether it appears in this form or in this form or in this form, I can just say said, he said. The subtlety of the meaning is lost in the classical literature. And out of these 3, the one which is more commonly used is this one, anadyatan bhuta, in the literature. So, and this is easier to use also, like the forms. So even though we have to be familiar with all the forms if you really want to read all the literature, but this one is more commonly used, anadyatan bhuta. So similarly, there are 2 future tenses, and the concept is kind of similar here. One is anadyatan bhavishyan. This is something which will not take place today. So the future, but other than today, beyond today. So to describe the event of future other than today, or you can say other than the recent future, you will use this one, periphrastic future. I do not know where the terms come from, aorist, periphrastic. These are English grammatical technical terms. If you are not familiar with these words, then they would be as comprehensive or as incomprehensive as the Sanskrit words. But these words are coming from the English grammar literature, or you can say Latin or Greek grammar. They use the corresponding terms in English for those tenses in those languages. And then this is the simple future. This is the general future, which can be used to describe any event, whether today or later. So just like the past tenses, the subtlety of the meaning is lost. So in the 2 future tenses, that subtlety of the meaning is lost. So, but this one is more common, and a good thing that it is more common to use, because it is much easier to make. The endings here are much easier to understand and make than in the lut lakar. So these are the tenses, and then there are moods. So there are 4 moods. We are not considering subjunctive or the late lakara. Agnya is imperative. So when you have to request something to somebody, you have to give orders to somebody, you have to direct them to do something, like go there, or can you bring something to me? If you want to request something, please bring something to me. You also use this mood in the form of blessing or wishing, like prayer kind of thing. So may everybody be happy. So in that sense also you use this. What can I do for you? In that sense also it is used. So this is imperative tense. But when you are giving a order or request, then this is used quite commonly. Then there is a potential mood, which is called vidhilinga. This is used in the sense of should be, maybe, might be, in that sense, like you should study. So in that sense it will be used. Or you should, many, and also it is used in the sense of blessing or wishing something. Many a times you will find there is an overlap between usage of this and this in Sanskrit literature. Then conditional, as you can understand, if this happens then I will, if rain happens then I will not go. So this is kind of conditional mood. And ashish, it is to wish for something which is beyond my reach right now. So may you become the president of United States of India, something like that. Then I would use this. It's translated as a benedictive, but benediction is something which is currently beyond reach. May you be realized. So currently I feel it's beyond reach, and you could use ashirde. So it's used in a sense of benediction, but a little different than what is used here. But we say may you be happy, something like more used. Sometimes you will see the overlap of usage, but there's some difference in here. These two are more commonly used. First, among the moods, the lot lakara is the most commonly used, then vidhiling. These two are very little in use. And out of these lakaras, these tenses and moods, 4 of them I have highlighted in yellow. And there is a reason for that. The reason for that is that these 4 tenses and moods will, so I said lakara just to have come to refer to them, lakaras to refer to them all the tenses and moods. So these 4 lakaras which are highlighted in yellow here, they actually form their final usable verb forms. So there is a root plus suffix plus, so you can say this is like intermediate suffix, and then this is final suffix. So this root plus suffix, this becomes anga or the stem. We saw like in bhu, for example, or gum. So we saw the gam dhatu. And it had a suffix. Some suffix was there, because of which the stem became gacha. And then we applied that final suffix is ti, taha, anti, and it final forms becomes gach. So plus ti, and it becomes gachati. So we did not see what is that intermediate suffix that we will see in the next table classes, but the idea is that there is some intermediate suffix which gives rise to the stem, and to that stem then we apply these endings, and that becomes the final form. So these four tenses actually use this intermediate suffix, while the other ones don't. So other ones forms become more difficult to make, because when you directly apply this ending to the root, lot of rules come into play which make the form really difficult to make. In this case, when there is a stem, and particularly the stem which is ending in akara, then that stem makes the application of these suffixes very easy. So these four tenses, there is a technical word called sarva dhatuka lakara. Sarva dhatuka lakara simply means, a technical Sanskrit word means, these four lakaras, they use the stem as an intermediate suffix before the final suffixes which we studied, ti, taha, anti, they are applied. So while the other six lakaras, they do not have this intermediate suffix. And what Panini did, Panini divided all the roots. So there are 2000 roots. They are divided into 10 classes based upon what this intermediate suffix is, so that these lakara forms can be derived easily. So based upon this intermediate suffix, Panini divided all the 2000 roots in 10 classes, or we call gana in Sanskrit. So root classes, gana. Here is the thing actually. So these root classes or gana, these 2000 roots, there are some classes where this intermediate suffix causes the stem to become akaranta. The intermediate suffix is akaranta. So we studied those. We studied, then it becomes akaranta. But there are certain suffixes, intermediate suffix, where it does not become akaranta. And like one of the forms which you just saw, like this one, is kru. So kru belongs to a class, this root, which does not have a intermediate suffix ending in akara. And therefore the forms here become slightly different. As you can see, karoti, kurutaha, kurvanti, they are not exactly the same pattern. They are not so simple pattern as you have, say for example, gam, gachati, gachata, gachanti. Here in gum, if you know just this root, this word, you can produce the all forms. In kru, you cannot do that. So the good thing is that there are more than half the roots which actually have this akaranta intermediate suffix. So you cover a very good ground just by learning some simple steps to know that this verb, what will be the final forms. More than half the roots belong to the category where the intermediate suffix is akara. So these four forms become very easy actually, because first of all, they will be used when there is an intermediate suffix, and particularly in the case when intermediate suffix is akaranta, these four forms become very easy to make, because all you have to do is just learn one and you practically learn like 1000 verb forms, 1000 plus verb forms. And there is another, which is root. Even though it doesn't take an intermediate suffix, there are certain rules which also makes this form very easy. And these five, lat lakara, lang lakara, simple past, root lakara, simple future, lot, and vidhiling, out of the 10 tenses and modes, 10 lakaras, these five are used much more extensively than the remaining five. So these five are fortunately easy also, quite easy. These four are very systematic. the ones highlighted, and even root is generally very easy. So I'll show you a sample, how do they look like, and you will see that how easy it actually becomes. So this is the sample of the form. Actually, there is another place. So I'll show you the sample of first the conjugations of bhu. So let me just reduce the view a little bit, so the whole thing will fit on screen. Okay, so here is the bhu. You have already been familiar with this root, bhu. It means to become, and it is a parasmaipadi root. So I have put in lat lakara present tense, ordinary past tense lang lakara, lot lakara, and vidhiling. I'll highlight this. Vidhiling lakara and lut lakara, the simple future and command mode, mood, and operative mode. Command is the same as imperative mode. So if I know this form, bhavati, bhavata, bhavanti, which we already know, then you see it's actually quite easy to make other forms. So they follow the very similar kind of pattern. So if you know bhavati and you know, you can see that how can I make, like bhavati becomes abhavat, then abhavatam, abhavan. You had to remember these, of course, but they follow the same structure. When I say they follow the same structure, that means that if I know bhavati and you tell me there is another root called vad, means to speak, root vad, to speak, and the third person singular form of lat lakara present tense equivalent to this bhavati, it is vadati. Vadati. Then I can easily find, so it becomes avabat, that becomes, that form will become avadat. If it becomes avavatam, here the form will becomes avadatam. And so on. Similarly here, like it becomes bhavatu, the lot lakara singular, third person singular, bhavatu, here it will become vadatu. So you can actually, if you know the third person singular of lat lakara, of any verb form where the stem is ending in akara, that means more than 1,000 roots, and if you know this set of table for one root, let's say you make yourself familiar with these tables, these 5 3x3 tables for only one root, you practically can produce these tables for all those thousands of roots which have the stem ending in akara. So this is a pretty powerful aspect of Sanskrit structure, and then you can start identifying. So I have posted these endings in here. So and this file has been posted in our repository. So here I have actually put lat lakara, and this is in Excel form because it's a little easier in Excel form to fit together. And love for the same structure will follow for the Atmanepadi. So if you can, I would strongly recommend you that you chant them multiple times in a day. You get the feeling of how the endings are. These all these forms, they are not so many. If you look at total, they are 3x3, so 9, and if you take 5 lakaras, For Parasmipadi, they are 45 and 9 here for 45 here for Atmanepadi, so that will become 90. And some of them you are already familiar, Bhavati. But this, if you have the familiarity with these forms, you can start identifying a lot of patterns in Sanskrit verbs when they occur in different texts. And as you see that if you know one, you can make as many as you want, as long as you are working with a verb where the stem is akara. And even if a stem is not akaranta, there would still be a lot of similarities. You may not be able to 100% identify, but there would be a lot of similarity. And you can at least guess which lakara and which number and which person that verb form belongs to. So this is actually, this part relates to these four. Now the root, as I said, this does not take the stem, yet even if it doesn't take the stem, it is still actually works very similar to lat lakara. Root lakara, the future tense, works very similar to lat lakara. So bhavati becomes bhavishyati. And the technique here is to achieve this, is this. So you will take bhavati, for example, from here, and then before this akara, before the suffix and akara, you will put these three letters, bhavishyati, and it becomes bhavishyati. So these three letters comes actually, and this is in the everywhere. You see, before akara, before the last suffix and akaranta, it actually becomes these three letters. So that way it becomes very easy to produce. Literally all these forms, if you are on computer, you can just produce by find and replace. That's how easy it is. Once you know for one verbal form, you can produce for other verbal forms. Because root lakara doesn't always follow the stem route, sometimes there are some differences. And I'll just tell you, we don't need to be overly concerned about those differences right now. For example, gam dhatu, because that's what we have studied. Gam dhatu. So gam dhatu, if you remember, the form is gachati, but it doesn't becomes isha here. What it does is actually, instead of gacha, it starts with gum, which is the original root, gum, and then it puts some descending here. So it becomes gamishyati, not gachishyati. So there are certain different rules for certain roots as far as root lakara is concerned. But these four, they are pretty standard. And if you know one, as long as the stem is akaranta, you know practically all the this form for all the roots. So it becomes gamishyati. But once you understand that this is gum in the root lakara, you can produce these forms just as easy. So in example which I have provided here, lav dhatu, it also changes a little bit. It becomes lapsyate, as you can see here. Instead of lavhishyate, it becomes lapsyate. So the little minor differences you will find in root lakara in certain cases. But other four, you will not find deviations. You will and whenever I say you will not find deviations, one or two exceptions here or there might be, but in general, that's how it works actually. So with this, as I said, we are not going in. So instead of taking the endings, remembering the endings for all these separately, you already are familiar with this lat lakara, and you just chant these ones and become familiar with this. So I'll chant these forms one at a time right now, and you repeat after me, so that way you will get a feeling of how to chant these verb forms. So we'll start with lat lakara here. So I'll say one row at a time and you repeat after me. Bhavati, bhavataha, bhavanti, bhavasi, bhavathaha, bhavatha, bhavami, bhavavaha, bhavamaha. Then for lang lakara, past tense. Abhavat, abhavatam, abhavan, abhavaha, abhavatam, abhavata, abhavam, abhavava, abhavama. Then we'll do for the lot lakara or the command or imperative mode. Bhavatu, bhavatam, bhavantu, bhava, bhavatam, bhavata, bhavani, bhavava, bhavama. Here you might have already become familiar this bhavantu. If you, this is just for your memory. If you remember this word, we used in one of our prayers in Sanskrit class, bhavantu, and it means, so this is used in the sense of blessing or wish. So if you remember, it's sarve bhavantu sukhinah. We chant that prayer in the ending prayer, closing prayer. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah. May everybody become happy. This is what it means. So you can start seeing the meaning of those sentences. Similarly, santu. Even if you do not know the word, you can see that this is similar ending. And santu indeed is the same verb form for the root verb us. May everybody be healthy. And similarly, pashyantu. This is coming from that drush dhatu, pashyati. May everybody see goodness. So with this form, you can start seeing so many of these forms occurring and you can get a sense of the meaning of those. Then the vidhiling lakara. Bhavet, bhavetam, bhaveyuhu. Bhavehe, bhavetam, bhaveta. Bhaveyam, bhaveva, bhavema. And then future tense. Root lakar. Bhavishyati, bhavishyatah, bhavishyanti. Bhavishyasi, bhavishyatah, bhavishyatha. Bhavishyami, bhavishyavah, bhavishyamah. Okay, so with this, and I'm putting this table out there in the repository. You familiarize yourself with these forms. And I have also put in this repository for as dhatu. So you can see the word santu. You don't have to memorize this, just one of the regular ones which cover the most of the cases. But that would help you to understand these forms when they occur, and then you can refer back to them. And then for Kru Dhatu, as I said, this is a very important root, and it follows the pattern but slightly differently. I have given you this for reference. So we are not covering this, and I'm not expecting that you would memorize this, but wherever you find a word occurring with Kru Dhatu when you are reading Sanskrit, just you can refer back to here and say, oh, which lakara and which. So if you look at the word here, karva vahai, this is lot lakara, atmanepadi, first person, dual. Do you remember this word? This is occurring in one of our prayers, which we say in the morning. Saha viryam karvavahai. This is where it's coming from. This Saha viryam karvavahai. This is, so now you can see karvavahai means this is lot lakara when it is used in the first person or third person, generally in the sense of may we do this, like as a wish. So may we two together. So if it is a dual, it is first person. So it means we together, we two together. So may, Kru means to do. That means the meaning of this word would be karva bahai. May we two together do what? And this is where it actually provides viryam, strength. May both of us do the strength together. In Sanskrit, as I said, you can do anything. Kru Dhatu is so flexible, so you can do the strength together. Means may we grow in strength together. That's what in English you will translate. May we grow in strength together. But this is the flexibility of Sanskrit, particularly Kru Dhatu, that you can say may we do the strength together, literally. So from this, you also understand with Vishabhai, it also would be the lot lakara, because it is the same ending, lot lakara, atmanepadi, dual, first person. So similarly, here you see avatu. And if you just remember, we did this bhavatu in the singular of lot lakara. So avat, that means may he protect. Bhavatu means may he become, but avatu, because avdhatu means to protect, avatu means may he protect. We are praying to God, may he protect us both. So once you understand these endings, even though they are quite limited in terms of the total scope, in terms of the total scope of rules, like we have 2000 roots. But once you understand these endings, you start identifying the patterns in so many cases that you will start feeling very good about it, that you understand. And when you see the word meanings, you can understand it. Even then, you can see that how the word meanings is coming of a different word, and that's a very, very important thing. So I just wanted to give you an overview of this thing, and I would recommend you highly to actually make yourself familiar with these forms. And actually today's exercise we'll just do on these forms. So today's exercise, I'll do this. So you will write these forms looking at these tables. Write the conjugations of gum. You already know the anga, the stem. Stem is gacha. We have already done gum dhatu many times. So we have already done in lat lakara, present tense, gachati, gachatah, gachanti. So except present tense, you do in all other four tenses. And for lut lakara, the future tense, third person singular is gamishyati. Gam dhatu, I told you, it's not, so gamishyati, gamishyatah, gamishyanti, like this. So try to write this. We'll post the solutions, of course, later on the drive, but just try to see. And my main idea is that you become familiar with this structure and this endings. Okay, so with this, I'll mute my microphone. It is 10 o'clock. These four tables, 3 by 3, probably every table may take you 3 minutes, or we'll do 12 minutes. And if you are not able to complete or not able to do correctly, don't worry too much about it. We are not going in too much depth right now. Idea is that you become familiar with the structure and the meaning of the tenses at least. And that way you can identify the meaning of the verb forms and when they occur in the scriptures or text. Okay, so with this, I would actually, let me just change a little bit of the setting here, make it maybe 83, that way it will fit completely. Yeah. So if this is exercise 37 class, you can send the solution and I'll mute myself now. So we'll meet at 10:12 or 10:13. Welcome back, everyone. So I hope that you were able to get some feeling of the structure, and we already discussed the meanings of the tenses. We'll put those meanings in our class notes also, so that you can refer to the class notes. And once you understand that, then this logic of person and number, that of course remains common across all the tables of 3 by 3, and you can easily guess the meaning of, if you know the meaning of the root, you can easily guess the meaning of the word. And even if you don't know the meaning of the root, at least you can get the feeling of the tense or mood, and then root potentially you can look at either in the word meanings or from the dictionary. So there are a few more things related to verbs. I'll just quickly cover them, not like in great detail. So there is a transitive verbs in Sanskrit, and they are called sakarmaka. So just like in English, some verbs take objects and others don't. In Sanskrit also, there are some verbs, roots, which take object, and they are called sakarmaka. Sakarmaka literally means with karma. Karma means the second case. So literally it means some verbs take the object case, the second case, and some other verbs don't take second case. So that's literally it means. So in English, in Sanskrit, it's very clear, actually, very clear distinction. Object means that it has to take something in the second case only. Then only it would be called sakarmaka. Otherwise, it's called akarmaka without taking the second object. Then prayoga, the voice, like active voice, passive voice. So in Sanskrit, there are actually 3 voices. So active, passive, and then there is something called bhave. It's difficult to translate the word in English because English doesn't have the equivalent of it, but it's, I'll explain to you the concept. So active is very similar what we have already done. For example, Ramaha Vidyalayam Gachati. Rama goes to school. If you turn into the passive, it also very similar in like in English. In English, you would say school is being gone to by Rama. Generally, we don't make those kind of structures in English that way because there is a preposition too. But suppose if you are saying, I'm telling you, you can make the passive in English, you are being told by me. That's more common in English. But in Sanskrit, because the prepositions aren't there, it doesn't matter. Any active word can be turned into passive. Any active sentence can be made a corresponding passive sentence. So that is in English. In Sanskrit, we are not, of course, discussing here how the passive is formed. That would be for level 2 classes, just to get you an idea that there is a passive voice in Sanskrit and active voice. So active voice is what we have studied so far, not the passive voice, but there is a passive formation. And then there is a bhave formation. Bhave means, so just the action, so the passive actually becomes, the object becomes in focus. Like if I say Rama is going to school, and if I say school is being gone to by Rama, school, the Vidyalaya, that comes into the focus, that becomes the subject. So object and subject switch actually. So subject becomes, object becomes subject, and subject actually goes in the third case. Not in the object, but as a third case in Sanskrit. So that becomes passive. But in bhave, what happens is that even if those verbs which do not take object, like for example, laugh, if you say he laughs, in English, there is no way that you can make passive out of it, passive sentence out of it. It's an active sentence, he laughs, he is laughing. But in Sanskrit actually allows you to make passive out of those sentences also which do not have an object. And those passive category is called bhave. That means the focus is just on the action. Literally, if you translate in English, that kind of sentence, it will be laughing is being done by him, something like that. It sounds very strange in English, but in Sanskrit, those kind of sentences are very common and they are considered perfectly valid. So bhave and passive, they are the actually, it's only one category. Passive is not really to separate in the sense that they both are formed very similarly. One, this is for the verbs with the object, and this is verbs without the object. Then in Sanskrit, there is actually a, so we already saw there is a very good number of verbs, verbal roots. Then you have the prefix concept, upasarga, which by which you can make more verbs. And if all that were not enough, there is another secondary set of suffixes called secondary verbs. They are also possible to create in Sanskrit. So just to give you an example, how do they look like? So these are the 4 categories of secondary verbs. So one category is causative, like you can cause somebody to do something. Again, we are not going into detail. There is like it will be different labels. We'll cover these kind of secondary verbs. I'm just giving you a sort of conceptual idea here. Causative is, so if, for example, if I say I go, he goes. In English, if I say he goes to school, and then if I am making him go to school, I say I make him go to school. That's how you make that sentence actually in English. You make somebody do something. But in this make somebody to do something, what Sanskrit does, Sanskrit just creates another verb form. Instead of creating this kind of a structure, I make him do, you create another verb form and you just use that verb form, and that verb form is called causative. So the example here I have put bhasayate. Bha means to shine, and bhasayate would mean I am making something shine. So in Gita it appears, bhasayate natad bhasayate surya. The sun does not make that particular thing shine. That it refers to the self. That sun does not make self shine. Like self is self-effulgent. Sun does not make it shine. Then there is a desiderative forms. So if I say I want to, I go to school, and I can also say I want to go to school. In English, you always have to use this I want to. In Sanskrit, there is a whole different verb form is created to just cover this particular aspect. I want to, I desire to. So that's called desiderative. So jiji vishama means, ji means to, it's coming, we would like to live, we want to live. That's what jiji vishama would mean. Then something of conveying the sense of intensive and frequentative. So something which is done with an intense action or frequently done. Then there is another verb form. So lelilyase, li means to lick. Lelilyase means licking again and again, or licking very intensely. Then there is a denominative. So you can take any kind of noun and create a verb form out of it. So putra means son. And the way this verb form creates, putri yati, it means she wants her own son, something like that. So these are not so common in use in Sanskrit, but they are used. And it just gives you that power of the Sanskrit language that allows you to create these secondary verb forms. And again, all these secondary verb forms will have their own 10 tenses and moods. So just wanted to give you an idea that the scope which Sanskrit can actually really cover, and which is just, I haven't seen in any other language which would have like these kind of suffixes to create secondary verbs of so many different varieties. So with this, I just wanted to give you an idea of the verbs, cover whatever we have read so far, as well as tell you the tenses and moods and some other concepts in verbs. Verb, as you remember, I told you it's the central concept in Sanskrit. So every sentence has a verb. In some cases, the verb is implied and it's not explicitly mentioned. Nevertheless, it is there. And one sentence will have one verbal form. And a verb alone can be a complete sentence. But without a verbal form, a sentence will not be there. And verb is, because of, now you got some idea what verb is. I have been telling you from the beginning that verbs are most complex topic in Sanskrit grammar, and you probably get some idea why they are so complex actually. And remember, the different roots, they follow some different logic. So to make the forms of those roots are not so intuitive or easy. They follow a lot of rules. But despite all that complexity, if you just cover this ground, as I told you, you are in pretty good shape. You can start identifying a lot of forms which occur in the scriptures, in the text, in the Sanskrit text. So despite the kind of complexity which is there is a certain set, like in Sandhi we saw that we are only covering less than 20% of rules, but we are covering more than 90% of the scope. In verb, it's not quite like that kind of percentage, but still, if you just learn this much, you would cover a pretty good ground. I just wanted to also update you a little bit on the level 2 course we discussed about last time. So I have received emails from some of you that who are interested. Please send, other people also should please send email to if you are interested in attending that level 2 course. We will have a gap of at least a month. Some people are requesting a little bit more gap. We'll see. We can probably have maybe 6 weeks. But remember, the level 2 classes would be only twice a week, not thrice a week. And even out of those two, one would be scripture. The scripture class would be common for all. And we will not have Devanagari as a limitation. So you can, even if you are not attending level 2 class, you can still attend the scripture class. And the scripture class technically would be open to anybody, even those who have not attended Sanskrit 1 course. They may just feel a little bit bored with the grammatical details, but they can still learn the scripture. So some people have raised the concern regarding Devanagari script. So what I can do is, I can take like first 2 or 3 classes in both scripts. So that will give you 3 weeks time additional to learn Devanagari. And I would recommend you, just because of Devanagari, if you don't want to attend, you should attend the first 2-3 classes. See how is it going, whether you are able to pick up. And it's the limitation, as I said, is more on the coursework. The books are available in Devanagari. So that I potentially can't change, but at least first 2-3 classes or so we can manage and see if that will give you some additional time to learn Devanagari. So the workload in the level 2 course is supposedly lighter. It will not be as intense. This classes became quite intense actually. So level 2 classes would be a little bit lighter. We will also keep our support email open in the meantime. So from now on, when you are, I would, as I suggested, you do all the coursework exercise for this level 1, which we just completing on Friday. We will be completing this course on Friday. We will keep, so we will keep the email open, we will keep the email active. So you please keep sending your exercises and questions to that email, and we would respond to your questions as much as possible. In fact, I'll have probably a little bit more time to respond to those questions. So please keep sending your exercises and questions which you have, which arise based upon your pursuing the course in this level 1 course. Because there are so many questions which you have asked in the past and I could not actually take them in the class, what I am planning to do, and also there would be many more questions coming up in the coming week. What I'm planning to do is to take one additional class after. So course will finish on 1st May, Friday. What I'm thinking to do is to take an additional class on 11th May, Monday 11th May, just for question and answer. So that will be open for all of you who are attending level 1 course. It will not cover any new topics, but I will tackle all the questions which you may be having. So this is just the question and answer class. So please, that will give you about 10 days time after the course finishes. Course finishes on 1st, and that will give you 10 days time to catch up on certain exercises, on some topics, and get some questions. So the 11th, we will have a special class on Monday, same time, 9 o'clock, and that will be just for question and answer. So I just wanted to announce this. 11 o'clock, we'll have a special class just for question and answer. So please pursue this course. Whatever you have, if you have not been able to catch up, and I know many of you have not been able to keep up to the course because of some other engagements you have. So this will give you some 10 days, and you should be able to get a few more questions. Again, when you're submitting the exercise, always check your solutions against the solutions we are providing, so that you can see where you are making mistakes, and you can ask us the questions rather than just simply submitting the exercise. So when you are submitting the exercise, please check your answers against the solution we are providing, and we are providing the solution of each exercise. So class exercises, we are providing the solution in the class notes. Generally, home exercises, we are providing the solution as a separate file in the same directory, in the same place in the repository. So they just wanted to announce a special class on Monday 11th for question and answers. Then there was also a concern regarding level 2 course for the books, that you want the book information in advance. I would say at this time you can buy the Egenes books, the volume 1 and 2, which we have been studying. There would be, I'm thinking of recommending another book also for the level 2 course, and that will not be required in the first 2-3 classes. So that will give you 2-3 additional weeks to buy. So we will have ample time. So by the time I send out a notification for this course will start sometime in June. We don't know exactly date yet, but the plan is to have sometime in June it starts. Definitely you will have more than a month's time to catch up with the level 1 course. So the idea is that I will send out a notification for registration for level 2 class. And in that registration, when we send out, we'll recommend the book recommendation should be ready. So you will have plenty of time to actually acquire that book before we start using that book in the class. But for now, at least if you want, you can order these Thomas Egenes books which we are following, level 1 and level 2. Because we would be level 2, the volume 2 would be one of the books we would be following in level 2 class. And they are just good books to have, because once you have studied any book, it's always good to have that book in the collection. So this just wanted to give you a little bit update on the level 2 class. Let me just explain you the homework. And for today's homework, so this we did already, exercise 38. This is actually, so what I'm asking here is this. I'm asking you to actually write these forms for these 2 roots. Pat, to fall down, kath, ubhaypadi, to tell like to tell a story, or to narrate something. I have already put the Excel spreadsheet which gives you these forms which we discussed today. So you can look at that Excel spreadsheet. I have given you the file name, verb, conjugation table in this folder, other study material. So if you go to repository and you go to other study material, you will see this file called verb conjugation table. So this has all the verb forms. So refer to this file for solving this exercise. And you can post your solution either in Word or in Excel to send to us. That's fine. Or manually handwritten. That's fine too. So I have also written the first person form of the latlakara, patati, kathayati. This is ubhaypadi, so you have to do in both parasmaipadi and atmanipadi. And kathayati is the parasmaipadi form. Kathayate is the Atmanepadi form. All these forms are akaranta stem, so you should be able to put the structure together. And we will post a solution. When we post a solution for this exercise, we'll post in the Excel format itself. So we'll update the same table, same file with additional tabs in Excel. So just so that you know that there are tabs in Excel. So first tab is bhu and lav dhatu, then as dhatu, then kru dhatu, and we will put an additional tab for this exercise solution. Okay. Second home exercise is simple Thomas Egenes lesson 14. So you solve this, send us the solution for this, and exercise 3, it is only in Devanagari. So we have put the transliteration also out here. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, everybody.